Alright, so before we get into the last example, I want to show you all a couple of review problems. This is what's called a complex fraction. It's got a fraction, and then within that fraction you've got two other fractions, or potentially maybe three other fractions kind of added and subtracted within it. Now, had I just had these two, that is not a complex fraction. That's just a division problem. The second I throw in more than one fraction, then it becomes complex. So looking at example A real quick, I may have time to do B, we'll see. I want to try to eliminate all the little fractions. So if I look at these three, I look at the denominators, 3, 2, and 6, and I think to myself, between those three numbers, what is my least common multiple? And the answer to that, between 2, 3, and 6, the least common multiple is actually 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 6. And when I do that, 6 times 2/3 is 12/3, which is the same thing as 4. You can do that in the calculator if you want to, although you should be able to do it without that. 6 times 2 is 12, divided by 3 is 4. 6 times 1/2 is 3. And then minus comes down, and then 5 6 times 6, the 6 is actually canceled, you're left with just a 5. What happens is you can simplify this by subtracting the 3 minus 5 to get -2, and then you get a -2 for your answer. Okay? And then do the second one pretty quick, that way we can move to the real problems. Same thing. Between 5, 2, 10, and 4, the least common multiple is 20. So if I multiply the top and the bottom by 20, all of those little individual fractions should cancel. 3/5 times 20 gets you 12. 3/2 times 20, so 3 times 20 is 60, 60 divided by 2 is 30. 20 times 1/10 is 2. And then 20 times 3 is 60. 60 divided by 4 is 15. And then from there I can, simplify my fraction. 12 minus 30 is -18. 2 minus 15 is -13. Reduce that to get your final answer of 18/13. Now all that's done because I'm showing you that the steps will apply to these next two to 3 questions. It'll probably split between 2 videos. So the first one is this one right here. This one is probably the easier of the 3 that we're going to do. This is a complex fraction that we're going to try to simplify. Instead of just having numbers, it's numbers and variables. So, looking at this, we're going to try to eliminate all 3 of these little fractions. Okay, and if you notice, none of these denominators can be factored, so we don't have to worry about that first step. We don't have to factor in this case because there's nothing to be factored. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to eliminate all 3 of those fractions by doing the same thing we did in these more simple questions, which is we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by what will get those fractions to cancel. Like here we did 6/6, here is 20/20. All we're doing is essentially multiplying by 1. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. The easiest way to do it, this is the only way I can kind of talk through it, is I'm going to look to see what's on the bottoms, and that's what I'm going to multiply to the top and the bottom. So here I see there's an x plus 4. I'm going to put that on the top and the bottom. I have another x plus 4. Well, I already have that. I don't need to put it again. And then I have an x. And it really makes no difference where you put it, but I like to have it look nice, so I put it out front. And that is my least common multiple. Okay, and you'll see that when I multiply this to all 3 fractions, like for instance, if I multiply this, just the top here, if I were to take a piece of paper and cover up that bottom part here, essentially this is on the top, that's on the bottom, these 2 will cancel. And I'm left with 5 times x, which is 5x. That fraction is now gone. That's the same thing I did here as well. I did the same thing. 6 times 2/3, or in this case 6 times 5 6, the 6 is canceled. Okay? Do the same thing to the bottom, but now I'm going to have to distribute. I'm going to multiply this to the first fraction, And I'm not going to be able to cancel these because I have to reuse it. But the x plus 4 will cancel. I'm left with the 1 times the x, which is 1x. The plus sign drops. Then I multiply these two. I can actually cancel these now. I'm going to just cover them up. The x's cancel. I'm left with 2 times the x plus 4. So what I want to do now, if you notice, I don't have any little individual fractions. I can now simplify this. The top is going to stay. I'm going to distribute the 2 on the bottom to get 2x plus 8. And then I want to combine my like terms, and this should get me my final answer. 1x plus 2x is 3x, and then plus 8. Because I can't factor anything, nothing's going to cancel. This is my final answer. Okay. Alright, my next video I have the last 2 examples. These were 2 kind of easier setups. The first 2 very basic ones, and then one that's a little bit tougher.